In California, between 1974 and 1986, the suburbs became the hunting ground for a man with an uncanny sense of timing. The Golden State Killer committed over 120 burglaries, 50 rapes, and at least 13 murders. He learned the exact rhythms of his victims and moved through the dark with the calm of someone who believed he would never be found. Then, after years of escalating violence, the attacks simply stopped. He vanished, leaving investigators with a clean genetic profile that matched no one, anywhere, in any database the police could reach. For survivors and the families of the dead, this silence meant the trauma remained a permanent open wound. It stayed alive precisely because the single name that could close the case refused to surface. Detectives passed these files down like an inheritance nobody wanted, each new investigator opening the same boxes and hitting the same dead ends for over 30 years. DNA catches criminals by comparing crime scene samples against a national database, a vault of genetic code from prior offenders. But the system only recognizes those already on file. Since this offender had never been arrested, the database found no match for that code. Investigators possessed the definitive piece of forensic evidence, yet they remained paralyzed by a system that could only identify people it had already processed. While the case remained frozen, millions of ordinary people were spitting into little plastic tubes and mailing their saliva to companies that promised to map their ancestry. After getting their results, many of them uploaded that raw genetic data to free public websites like GED Match. They were looking for long-lost cousins or a deeper sense of where their family came from. Through this innocent pursuit of family history, everyday citizens inadvertently constructed a new genetic network, one that rapidly outpaced the growth of any criminal database. Geneticists track connections through identity-by-descent segments, chunks of code passed down intact from a common ancestor. A first cousin shares an eighth of your DNA, a third cousin less than 1%. But that tiny fraction is a traceable thread back to the source. For investigators, following that thread means climbing back through more than a century of marriages and moves until the pool of possible descendants swells into the thousands. A match in an ancestry database doesn't name a killer. It simply identifies the massive family tree the killer is hiding in, requiring months of patient work in county record rooms and old obituaries to find the right branch. In 2018, a small team of investigators and genealogists began this manual forensic archaeology. They took the killer's DNA and uploaded it as if it were just another curious person searching for relatives. They used historical records to build a sprawling family tree, then layered in everything the case already knew: the suspect's sex, approximate age, and where his crimes occurred, to cut away every branch of people who couldn't possibly be him. The tree narrowed until it pointed to a single name: Joseph James D'Angelo. He was a former police officer who had once been on the other side of the very investigations he was now caught in. To confirm the find, they followed him and waited for him to leave a piece of himself behind. They recovered a discarded tissue from his trash, swabbed the DNA he had freely abandoned, and found the match they had been waiting for since 1974. The man who outsmarted law enforcement for 4 decades was ultimately undone by the curiosity of distant relatives he had never even met. You don't have to take a DNA test to be found through one. You only need a cousin somewhere who did. Researchers found roughly 60% of people of European descent are already identifiable through a distant cousin in public databases. The math is relentless. A database only needs the DNA of 2% of a target population to locate almost everyone else through their relatives. Every new person who uploads a result widens this net. What began as a tool for the curious has become an instrument reaching almost anyone, and it didn't require a law or your consent to get there. For the families who waited decades for an answer, this technology is a miracle. It is the difference between a cold case and a story finally being told. Yet the same power that finds a killer could find a protester, a patient, or anyone who wished to remain unfound. Both things are true at once. In the age of consumer DNA, genetic privacy is no longer an individual right you can protect alone. It is shared out across an entire family, meaning that almost no one is truly a stranger anymore.